welcome to Good News Rhode Island, the show about Rhode Island and the people and places and events that make Rhode Island a great place to live, that build our communities. Today we're on site at 15 Westminster Street. I wonder if you or I would have even known a few months ago what that was. Well, that's the library, the Fleet Library for RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, here in Providence. It is a magical place, in my opinion, and if you like libraries, you will love this one. And sitting beside me is Carol Terry, who's here as the director of the library, about to retire, become emeritus, whose brainchild, this whole new place, was her brainchild, and so she's going to show us through it as the mastermind behind a lot of what you're looking at here. So welcome, Carol, and thank you so much for giving us your time.
My pleasure, Juliana.
I'm sure you're busy. A lot of people might know that it takes a lot of study to become a librarian. There are so many different facets to libraries now. Maybe that wasn't even part of your study. You've been learning as you've been going along. But tell us a little bit about the training that it takes to be a librarian.
Well, it is a master's degree program, and we do have one of the library schools at URI and another one at Simmons are the two local regional library schools. So it's a master's degree program that takes 1 to 2 years, and depending on your focus and exactly where you're going. I went to the University of Minnesota.
So deep in the middle of the country.
Yes.
And you brought back different viewpoints, maybe. Are libraries different in different areas because the demands are different?
Well, certainly different subject areas are different. We feel that art libraries are particularly special places, and we're still very engaged with the printed book, which some college and university libraries aren't quite so much anymore. But the printed book is still really important to us.
Let me ask you how this all came about, because we're sitting here in this gorgeous place and with a lot of new additions. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. I'm sure you were very much part of it.
Yes, I was very much part of it. I came in 1987 and started looking for a way to get a new library for RISD. It took a long time because we didn't really know where we could go to get the size of library we wanted. And President Roger Mandel and I started sort of brainstorming about where we could have a new library. In the meantime, there were all these banking halls becoming redundant downtown because of bank mergers. And we started looking at this space, and President Mandel started talking to Terry Murray, the CEO of Fleet Boston Financial, about maybe this could be the next library. So that was the first step.
And as you looked at this, it was dusty and was it leaking?
Well, it was still being used a little bit by Sovereign at the time, but it was owned by Fleet, and it was basically, it wasn't being used very well, and it had the most awful curtains on the windows. And it was a, wide open space, and we looked at it and trying to imagine how it could be a 21st century library for art and design. And so that began the process. And then finally in 2002, it was donated to us, and that's why we're the Fleet Library.
Oh, it was donated to you. How wonderful.
It was.
This is basically a basilica.
It is.
And it has so many different elements in it.
It is on the National Register of Historic Places. It was built in 1919 by York and Sawyer, New York bank architects, and it really is a fabulous example of early 20th century Beaux-Arts architecture in America. And banks at that time really wanted grand structures to show what solid institutions they were. So we really inherited a gorgeous space.
temple to economics, maybe.
Perhaps it was at that time. My safe deposit box was downstairs.
Oh, so you knew the bank.
I did.
Okay. And then you had someone else come and design some of these wonderful, innovative uses of this central space here.
Yes, we went through an architect selection process and chose Office Da, a firm in Boston, who they hadn't done a library, but they'd done a bookstore and a house with lots of books. And the one of the principals was Nader Tarani, who was a RISD alumnus, and his partner Monica Ponce de Leon. And they worked with us, with the staff, with our building program, to really think about what a library, a design library, how you would insert the functions of our library in this space and still respect the historic space, the National Register. So they were the ones who really came up with the idea of these pavilions. And they also designed this bench here that is a room divider, and the circulation desk and the reference desk, and made it almost like big furniture that sits in the space. And they carry all the functions that we need to have on the first floor of the library.
It seems to me that students come in, though, and they see something that's modern, that challenges them visually, the integration of modern and really antique, I mean, Greek, Roman, and then newer, much newer, the 19th century, 1900s.
Right.
They must learn just by being here, I would think.
Well, certainly it's an example of adaptive reuse, which is something taught in our interior architecture program. And also, I think just the use of materials is very innovative. We were looking for sustainable materials like the cork floors, and the pavilions are actually made of MDF, medium density fiberboard, which is a relatively inexpensive product, but it was used in such innovative ways. CNC routing was just becoming used. I think considering this was designed in 2004 and 5, built in 2006, we were really way ahead of our time in terms of how we were thinking about the space in the library.
So the library has many, many functions. It's not what it was when we were in college and when my friend went to library, got a master's in library science.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about what this particular library as an art college library does.
Well, as I said, the books are still important. We have around 100,000 volumes on this floor and then 60,000 between the basement storage and the second floor. So the students do come and do a lot of browsing, especially in the arts. It's important that they can just pull books off the shelf, lots of books, and look at lots of images or check lots of books out to read. So the books are still important. Of course, we have digital. We have a lot of digital resources, and students can come here and use their computers, their laptops. We do check those out. The other thing that's important in this space, well, we have video viewing, and as I said, computers students can use, but there are also a lot of group study spaces, and that is one thing that the students like to work together on projects. So whether it's classes or just meetings or group working on a project, we do have a lot of those kinds of spaces.
When I walked around, I mainly saw students looking at their computers. They were probably tied into something that's in your archives, I assume.
Well, they could have been doing work based on our various databases and image databases, or they could have simply been doing their own work on their computer. So especially here, where much of the students' work is done in the studio, this is an important away space for them to really be out of the studio, out of their rooms, and really in a place where they can think differently. So we have a motto that this is really, it's for research, but it's also for inspiration. So information, but also inspiration, and we see this really as an inspirational space for the students.
I see a lot of journals and magazines, and so they're getting a sense of what's going on yesterday instead of along,
Yes, yeah.
with books.
Right, on the balcony, and we'll go up there, we do have more than 300 current periodicals in the arts. And of course, that supplements everything that's available online for them. 1,200 or more journals online.
Wow. Is that open to the public, those journals?
Access to our databases is available on site. And we are open, our phrase is, we're open to the public who have need of our specialized resources. So we do want people to make appointments with us, to let us know what they're coming to research, and then we certainly are available. And we are open to the members of the Providence Athenaeum to come and use the library and check things out.
So this is the view from the bridge, essentially. It is very beautiful. I mean, you really see the innovation that took place to think of this as a library. You see the stacks, and obviously the checkout desk and all the services that go with that. And we're standing here in a study space. And this space is for collaborative work, is that right?
And an individual study. It just is, it's more traditional study at tables, and actually it's the number of seats we had in the old library is what is up here. And so we thought we would have a more traditional study at tables kind of space. But the great thing about this is you can sit looking out the north windows, or you can sit in the front here, sort of keeping an eye on what's going on in the library. And you do get a wonderful view of the iconic clock, which is in a way our logo is the clock. It was installed in 1920, and it's really a wonderful piece of the architecture here. So.
And you look out over Providence, which is also a very lovely site. So students come up here and they realize how fortunate they are that they have this big library when this was the size of the other one that you had.
Yes, that's right. The other thing that is very noticeable up here is the fact that we have names carved into the millwork. So there are around 2,000 names, and it's names of artists and designers in all of the fields taught at RISD. So past and present. It's just a historic collection, a little bit random, but not exactly, of important people in every area of study here. So you have architects and painters, and ceramists and fashion designers, art historians, librarians. So it's really a kind of fun game to see what names you can identify.
Well, who thought of that?
Well, the architects asked for names, and I decided that having artists and designers past and present representing all the fields would be a good thing.
Well, it says that you're part of a tradition, and not only does the architecture speak that loudly, but also then your other visuals. So
That's
it's
right.
very, very interesting. So it looks as though every American, I see French, other language journals having to do with the arts are here.
Mm-hmm. We do get, as I said, a little over 300 periodicals, current periodicals in print. So it does cover all of the arts, and it does keep our students current on what's happening in architecture and art and design. And we have these wonderful shelves that flip up, and then you get the back issues underneath. So this was a real change for us from the old library, so we're really glad to have this. The balcony does also have these study tables so students can work. We have 3 different areas along the balcony and some lounge chairs, so it's a very popular place.
So we're at the other end of the journals here, or not quite, just the S's. So we're looking down on the checkout area. You've built a sort of, I don't know what it is, a pergola in the middle. And you can really tell the architecture here. It's so interesting.
Well, the building, as I said, was built in 1919, and The chandeliers, I think there was a fair amount of restoration done in the mid-70s when the bank applied for the National Register of Historic Places. So when we moved in, we didn't have to do a lot of restoration of the ceiling or of the lights. One of the projects that still needs to be done is a relamping of the chandeliers. As you'll see, some of them are on, but some of them we don't have on, and it's because the fixtures are too hot, they're too expensive, and they're very difficult to change. So I have this idea that sooner or later we'll get LED lights in there and we'll be able to have them on. But the fixtures themselves are quite beautiful and are original. One of the things that happened, if you see the great big chandeliers, those actually, in all the history of this building as a bank, the lights on those chandeliers pointed downward. So part of our project was to take down those chandeliers and turn the lights up. So the ceiling is illuminated in a way it never was historically until we moved in.
Coffered ceiling, which is really Renaissance, but way before that, it's Roman.
The ceiling is gorgeous, and one of the things we needed to do was put sprinklers in the ceiling, and I always say that between the architects and Shawmut Construction, which was our construction firm and fabulous with this project, they were able to get the sprinkler heads above that barrel vaulted ceiling. So it's always a test when I have students in here and I'm showing them around if they can see where those are. And it's the smooth centers of that coffered ceiling. In the smooth centers are actually the sprinkler heads, whereas you can see quite a decorative center on the ones that don't have that. So that's
the secrets of restoration.
Yes, there are. Well, when you do a project like this, much of the money goes into things behind the scenes that you can't even see. I mean, getting the building up to code compliance, all of the infrastructure is a big part of the project. For instance, we're standing on this balcony where there's a gorgeous ceiling that had to be cut into to bring down emergency stairs because above us on floors 3 through 11 are student housing. And we needed emergency stairs on this side of the building for student housing. So the reason we have these periodicals here is that we needed to bump out the wall, change the ceiling, and put emergency stairs behind here. And we were able, the architects were able to do this cleverly enough that it really works with the original beautiful ceiling that was up here on the balcony. The other interesting things about this building, I think, I was just reading a book about the faux architectural materials used around the turn of the last century. And these columns are wonderful examples of the way at that time they were doing this kind of faux marble. Those are not marble columns, but it's a process that was developed. There were craftsmen who could make this material that made these columns look like marble, even though they're not. But the bases are marble, and when you look up close, you can see the difference between the real marble and the faux columns.
It's actually weight-bearing.
Yes, they are.
And
yeah.
So is it a plaster or?
It's a kind of plaster.
Yeah, very neat.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move to the next space. Thank you. We're here now in what's called the Materials Center. Is that right?
Right, the Material Resource Center.
Resource Center. And students can come here and find out all kinds of options for making sculptures or
other kinds of projects. What we are in is the Material Resource Center. We developed this just a few years ago when we realized that we no longer needed a traditional slide library. It used to be the space that we had 160,000 slides that faculty used for teaching, and that just wasn't necessary anymore because of digital imaging. So we had this gorgeous space, and even when we built this in 2006, we had the idea that it could morph into a material resource center. But it's really taken off. We have all sorts of different kinds of materials, and we are one of the largest in a general kind of library rather than simply an architecture or interior architecture library. So the idea is that students in all sorts of disciplines can use this collection to understand the range of materials available to them, as well as new materials. So as you can see, they are arranged by basic composition. We're working with Harvard right now to develop a database for these, and to really look at how materials are used in an academic and an art and design setting, rather than the material science side, which is another whole approach to materials. So if you take a look, we have them displayed behind us. There's plastics and ceramics, there are tiles, glass, cork, wood, stone, fabrics directly behind us, different kinds of polymers. And students do come and really, they can even check out the samples. They can't use them in projects, but they can check them out and use them as inspiration, or we can help them get more information about where they can get the products for their projects.
So they might design something and then send away to have it designed or have it poured or whatever in another site.
Yes, they use other vendors for a lot of their kind of work.
This was kind of neat. This is what it looks like to be in the canopy of trees. I really like this. So libraries in the future, what do you think will happen to libraries in the future?
Well, I think they will always be important, both as spaces to be either on your own or in a group or with a class, to really understand information sources, for inspiration, as I said before, inspiration and information. And now there is no end of information on the internet, but actually finding the right information needs sometimes a little professional support. So the librarians do a lot of teaching. We have a lot of classes that come to the library, and they use special collections, which is right across the hall from here, and we can bring out some of the most important or most relevant material for different classes that come. And we also have institutional archives here, so students have access to original resources and understanding how they can use that in research. And then one other collection we have on this floor is our picture collection. We have 500,000 pictures arranged by subject. And even though you can find a picture of anything on the internet, it's different to actually sit in a place, pull out a folder that has pictures collected over decades, and really look through them and think about what those pictures say and how they could inform your work.
So these are photography.
They're pictures clipped out of magazines and books, and representing all subjects from A to Z, people, places, things.
Okay, tell us something about this area, and how long has RISD been collecting files for their archives?
Well, we're in what was the trustees' meeting room when this was a bank. But we didn't know about this ceiling when we planned this project. It was one of the gifts of discovery. We had determined that this would be the picture collection, and we had begun demolition of the space. There was a dropped ceiling. It was quite low, probably the height of the ceiling that's right above us. And as we were demolishing that, there were a lot of mechanicals and all of this, but
mechanicals under this, so
yes,
that you would see those.
We discovered the remnants of this ceiling. It wasn't completely intact, but it was certainly intact enough that we could get it restored. And we recentered the room so that it was underneath this beautiful ceiling, and it just took moving the public space so that it was under the ceiling, and obviously the architects rethought the lighting for the space. So as I said, this is our picture collection. We have about 500,000 pictures arranged. Well, I think it's more like 478,310, but I always say 500,000. 500,000 pictures arranged by subject, and they're in 54 drawer file cabinets behind the counter, so that those are files that need to be requested. They're brought out. Students can look through them. They can check out up to 200 pictures from a file. The other files that are public access are mounted reproductions of works of art and artist files. This is the file on Valentine's, and so a student would check this out, and there are all sorts of pictures from magazines from the past decades and decades, and they're laminated. And they're just pictures out of magazines. So this actually came from a Look magazine from 1970, and this one came from, I don't know what, but they're really funny. They all do have their location somewhere on them, because we try to be sure to source them. We're not scanning these. Students can scan them for projects. But obviously we don't own the copyright for all these pictures. So it's really a reference file, and students, as I said, can come and look through, and often might even find something on the back that they weren't looking for. It's like, oh, well, that's cool, you know? So it's still, even in this age of digital and of, you know, saying you could find anything online, this is still a really important resource, and we think as more and more students grow up with everything being digital, they will find, the students who find this love it, and it often really informs their work and their thinking as they're thinking about, you know, illustrating something or painting something or designing something. So we still support it. There are not very many big picture files still being supported. We're one of, you know, I think New York Public, and you know, there are a couple other places that still have picture files, but not very many. Most of them have been abandoned.
I have to say I didn't know about picture files, so I'm very glad to learn about them. You have all those journals. I mean, somebody could go through all those journals after they're really obsolete and go through and increase your picture files, I assume.
Well, we actually just got hundreds of individual issues of old Life magazines from Providence Public Library that we're cleaning out their second copies or third copies. So I think they still have the bound copies in one set, but we now have a whole lot that we're clipping of old Life magazines. We had already done that, but as time goes by, either things get lost or they need to be replaced, or you look at things differently and you might want to collect something.
Very commodious space. I mean, it seems to me you just do everything to take care of the needs of the students. It's amazing.
Well, it's great, and there's a great staff, wonderful librarians, and it will continue to serve our RISD community and also the larger community of people who are interested in art and art research.
Well, you are about to retire, I hear.
I am.
How many years have you been?
29 years.
29 years, and what an accomplishment. I mean, you can rest on your laurels. I don't know if you'll travel to see all the different kinds of architecture that are influencing this building, but anyway, we hope you have a wonderful retirement, and thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure. You know I love this place.
You will always, will you be librarian emerita?
Perhaps. I don't think that's my call, but I think that might be possible.
Well, anyway, thank you for watching Good News Rhode Island. There are wonderful places in Rhode Island and people who are helping to make those places great, and we hope that you get in touch with some of them. Thank you for watching. There's good news around the corner, and you're probably helping to make it.